I'm embarrassed to say we got another law firm entering the hall of infamy, the hall of shame. Wilkie Farr and Gallagher. I used to extol your virtue. I actually tried to work there 35 years ago, at least for the summer associate class. You represented Ruby Freeman and Shay against Rudy Giuliani. And now, I guess you're going to fire Ruby Freeman and Shay because your pro bono program and your DEI hiring program doesn't fit with the new deal you just struck with the Trump administration to provide $100 million worth of pro bono free work to the Trump administration. Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, Skadden Arps, my old law firm where I started, Paul Weiss, we hardly knew you. Now was the time we needed you to stand up for democracy, not to look at your profits per partner. I break it down the only way I know how, honestly, authentically. I look you in the eye. I tell you what I think. I'm Popok Live, Tuesday nights on the MeidasTouch Network. And here's a clip. Let me start with law firms. That's my profession. Proud officer of the court. Took an oath of office 35 years ago. Am I up to 35? 35 years ago, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution, to be ethical, to give candor to the tribunal, candor to my opposing party, represent my clients zealously, and I believe in my oath. And I use my oath in different ways. I'm not practicing law as much as I used to now, but I am practicing here to protect democracy and use my skills to keep us together and talk truth to each other, right? So that's my way of doing it. But law firms matter in this country. Big law matters in this country because it's the counterweight to fascism. And when you have an out of control president, a limp noodle for a Congress, what's left? Federal courts, the right federal courts, the right federal judges, the Supreme Court, God help us, and lawyers that know what they're doing. And Donald Trump has gotten sideways and has him on their big law in his enemy list for a long, long time. Big law the first time around, and after Donald Trump participated and led an insurrection and was impeached twice and was convicted and multiply indicted, they abandoned him. He was radioactive. No big law wanted to represent him. Look at the lawyers that ended up representing Donald Trump that are now arrayed in our Department of Justice, including now Alina Habba. Alina Habba never practiced a day in federal court, didn't clerk for a federal judge, wasn't a U.S. attorney, had no real practice to speak of. She represented parking lots. She is now your U.S. attorney for New Jersey. Todd Blanche, the number 2 lawyer in the Department of Justice now, had to leave his law firm because they didn't want him representing Donald Trump. So he had a 1-lawyer law firm. Chris Keiss, remember him? Same thing, 1-lawyer law firm. And all the rest, 3-4-person law firms. Big law, 2,000, 3,000 lawyers, billions of dollars in revenue, said, yeah, no thanks. But their pro bono programs, which Donald Trump hates, because he hates diversity, equity, inclusion. He hates representing the rule of law. Pro bono is the way that big law always historically gave back to our society. Pro bono means for the public good, for free. So they would represent, in the case of Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, a New York-based firm I'm going to talk a lot about here in the beginning, that just bent over and said in a big declaration, they're going to give $100 million worth of pro bono assistance and basically turn their diversity and equity and inclusion policies out the door and turn it over to Donald Trump and their hiring practices. Well, that's not the Wilkie Farr and Gallagher that I know, because their pro bono program, led by the chairman of their litigation department, led by the guy who Fortune 10 companies hire for disaster recovery, that guy, he was representing Shay and Ruby Freeman. That's what pro bono programs in big firms do. It's a way for them to assuage their guilt for making billions of dollars in capitalism, representing hedge funds, representing investment banks, representing one side or the other of a merger or an acquisition. That's how they make $3 billion, $5 billion, $100 million, these mega large firms. But through their pro bono programs, they give back. The Capital Punishment Program, the Innocence Project, representing criminal defendants who can't afford, $1,500 to $2,000 an hour or more lawyers. These lawyers pitch in. The younger lawyers do the grunt work, but the senior lawyers supervise. Pro bono Pro bono programs are the lifeblood of our public service in America for lawyers. And Donald Trump knew that. So he wanted to clip it and cut the fuel line. So he went after these law firms and threatened these law firms and put 3 already on a blacklist to hit them where they live, their pocketbook, to make it so they can't represent people before the federal government. One firm in particular, it might have been, I think, Jenner and Block, or Wilmer Hale. I think Wilmer Hale has 100 current matters before the federal government on behalf of clients. It represents $500 million worth of revenue for them. I'm not sure they'd go out of business, but it'd be pretty close. And so Donald Trump had a list, sort of like McCarthyism. I have a list in my pocket of 22 communists in our government, no list at all. So he had a list of 14 law firms. He started rolling them out one at a time. Perkins Coie, don't like Perkins Coie because they went after me during the Russia investigation. Wilmer Hale, don't like Wilmer Hale because I think Robert Mueller ended up working there. Jenner and Block, we were going to represent Jack Smith, wherever the Russia investigation lawyers went, Donald Trump is out for retribution, led by Stephen Miller, the lawyer consigliere for him inside the White House, who ran his own BS law firm called America First, which is basically Project 2025's and the Heritage Foundation's personal law firm. And because it's really, let me just say this out loud. The one thing we learned, if we learned anything from the Signal chat debacle, the breach brigade, is that Stephen Miller's in charge. It's not Elon Musk. As I predicted a long time ago, Stephen Miller calls the shots. You could see it by the Snapchat. When he jumped in, when J.D. Vance got cold feet and said, maybe we shouldn't bomb the Houthis. I'm not sure helping the Europeans with their trade right now in Suez Canal is consistent with the president, with POTUS's belief. I'm not sure he's thought this through. And then out of the blue, the cold, dead, live hand out of the crypt of Stephen Miller came into the chat and said, well, what I heard from the president was the following, and it should be followed. Okay. Okay. It's the Wizard of Oz. Donald Trump's in the front with the big puffy head, a lot of smoke and lights. Who goes there? But the person behind there running the controls, Stephen Miller. So Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, I spent a lot of time talking about Wilkie Farr and Gallagher with high praise about them representing Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman. Remember those 2 election workers in Fulton County, Georgia, who got horribly doxxed and defamed by Donald Trump and by Rudy Giuliani, including recently on his own podcast, in which they said that they were passing a thumb drive back and forth to each other, the mother-daughter team. All they were doing was this lowly paid, no paid job of being election workers, counting ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. Of all the people here, I've been, not an election worker, but I've been in polling places. I've been an observer, an election poll watcher. I've been a poll observer. I've been an attorney for the Democratic Party inside the room during early voting and other voting. I've been there. You can look me up. I was even in West Palm Beach, Florida during the butterfly ballots and Bush versus Gore and watched the vote counting of those hanging chads. Remember that? That's a blast from the past. And that was my first taste of being in the media. I know my producer, who's slightly younger than me, is probably thinking, what is this boomer even talking about now? All right. I'm talking about, I was on Hardball with Chris Matthews, a brand new show, reporting from West Palm Beach. I was brought back for a second show as part of a little town hall they brought together. It was like 7 or 8 of us in the Sheraton Hotel in West Palm Beach to talk about the hanging chads. And I got on the air and they liked me so much, they brought me back for a second show. We're talking 2000. Yeah. All right. Why am I bringing that up? Okay. So I've been in the room. All they're doing is counting. And when they're done with their counting, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman put the ballots underneath in a black locked box. And the thing they were passing back to each other were not, as Sidney Powell led everybody to believe, corrupted thumb drive that you stick into the Dominion voting machines and the Smartmatic software and you convert Trump votes into Biden. It was a breath mint. To this day, Rudy Giuliani defames them and says that they were some sort of crackheads that were passing a thumb drive back and forth to each other. And they sued. And Rudy Giuliani lost before a jury, before Judge Beryl Howell in the District of Columbia, $148 million judgment. And then he went bankrupt to try to avoid it, and that didn't work. And then he tried to hide his Yankee memorabilia, and that didn't work. And then he tried to hide his house in Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago adjacent, and that didn't work. And then he tried to hide his co-op in Manhattan, and that didn't work. And it didn't work because the lawyers representing Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss were Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, the pro bono firm that just settled with Donald Trump for $100 million. You see why I'm upset? And this is on the heels, as I said it would be, of my old law firm, Skadden Arps. God, Joe Flom, who was the first associate. I just thought of something. See, it wasn't even on my page. It's very ironic. April Fool's Day. Yeah, April 1st. You know what started April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1948? Skadden, the law firm. Yes, I know that because they drill that into you, and then when they install the chip when you're a first-year summer associate or second-year summer associate. And the first associate, summer associate, first associate hired by Skadden, Arps, Slate, Marr was Joe Flom. And Joe Flom ran that firm. He was a titan. He was about 5 foot tall, but he was a titan, especially in mergers and acquisitions and corporate law. And I assure you, he is spinning in his grave for what Skadden Arps did. They were the first firm to take a look at the litigation landscape, where Perkins Coie had already received a temporary restraining order from Beryl Howell. And it was likely that Jenner and Block and WilmerHale were going to get injunctions too. And now they have, as of last Friday, right? Since I did my last show, 3-0 plaintiffs, 3-0 rule of law against Trump administration. And how does Skadden read that? A week ago? I don't know. Paul Weiss settled for $40 million. They took a couple of bad hits in the media, a couple of media cycles. They're still here. Let's do it. $100 million. That's the new bid price. This is like an auction. I feel like I'm at Sotheby's, except law professions, ethics, and morals are being auctioned off. You know, 40 million paddle? No, I won't do it. 100 million paddle. Yes. That's the number. And now that's set the new tribute that's got to be paid to Donald Trump. Sure, it's not in cash, but it's in something even more valuable. Lawyer time. I figured it out. It's the equivalent of about 80 lawyers working round the clock for a year on the Trump administration pet projects. And you know what those are? Anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-transgender people, anti-voting rights, voter suppression. So are the Wilkie Farr and Gallaghers, here's my question, are they having now sacrificed their oath? Are they now going to flip sides and fire Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman? Are they now going to do Donald Trump's bidding? Apparently so. Apparently so. To avoid what? Any client that would fire you for being principled and being a lawyer wasn't worth having that client. Sure, you might lose, $1 billion. You may not, by the way. You may pick up $1 billion from other firms that are proud to be affiliated with you. And who would hire them to handle anything, having them folded in front of the federal government so quickly? Welcome back. That's a new podcast. Developed it right after the election. It's me. Unplugged, unfiltered, sometimes unhinged, certainly with no censorship whatsoever. And I'm glad you joined us there. Join 500,000 people or more that join us every week for Popok Live Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the MeidasTouch Network. And of course, you can catch all the rest of my gigs on the MeidasTouch Network. I do legal and political commentary on a regular basis. I do 14 or 15 videos a week. And then over on the Legal AF YouTube channel, which I do in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, I curate some of the finest law and politics commentators you're going to find anywhere in the YouTube universe. They all reside in one place, Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Come on over there and free subscribe. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.